स्टार्ट इट। जो पहला कंटेंट जो मैं आपको बोल रहा हूँ ये एसएससी सीएनडी ग्रेड टेस्ट नंबर 103 के नाम से मिल जाएगा आपको @100, और सेकंड वाला जो बोलूँगा वो @80 के नाम से मिल जाएगा। दोनों कंटेंट अलग अलग होंगे। स्टार्ट इट। Mr. Deputy Chairman, sir, our railway system is the largest in Asia and the fourth biggest perhaps in the whole world, employing about 20 lakhs of people. It was rather refreshing to note that for the first time in about 7 years period, a balanced budget has been presented, sir. This is very encouraging, especially when this has been done without increasing the passenger fares. However, it is a matter of some concern that about 70% of the revenues of the railways is spent on establishment expenditure alone, and this aspect has to be looked into very carefully. Sir, it has been stated by the Railway Minister that the Railway Administration is now seeing the end of the tunnel. I hope that their seeing the end of the tunnel is not any illusion. They have also said that they are working on all the cylinders, but apparently, talking in technical terms, it appears that the cylinders still lack the compression, otherwise the performance should have been much better. Sir, there is another important thing to which I would like to invite the attention of the Honorable Railway Minister, and that is the Railway Board. It is a very familiar and popular topic of criticism in both the House of Parliament. Well, sir, it is high time that the Minister and the government had a second look at it and took a view on whether the Railway Board has served its utility or still it is required to serve the railways and the country. Sir, this utility has to be established and only then the Railway Board is to be allowed to continue. Otherwise, we will have to agree that it is only a white elephant. Sir, let us hope that these increasing financial results will continue to be increasing till the end of the year, although the railway financial authorities have not taken into consideration that impact of the additional dearness allowance which may have to be paid to the railway employees during the year. And if this is done, I am sure that the surplus that this budget has attempted to bring about will be upset and the whole working will be imbalanced and we will end up with a deficit budget at the end of the year. However, I am not very much despondent about this matter because the railways have been rather conservative in making their estimates of earning from freight and passenger traffic, and if our hopes of getting additional revenue materialize, I hope it would be possible to provide adequate caution for the payment of the increased dearness allowance which may be given to the railway employees in due course. Sir, for improving the image and the working results of the railways, they will have to work very hard. It is too early to expect that the budget will not have any inflationary impact at all. The gap between the revenue and the expenditure for the year 2004-05 is of the order of rupees 144 crores, and this is a very big gap, and I hope that this sort of performance will not be repeated during this year as things stand today, and if past performance is any indication, the prospect of any striking improvement in the efficiency and productivity of the railways is still very doubtful. Let us hope that this doubt will not materialize. For instance, in the year 1995-96, the railways carried 200 million tons of goods traffic, but in the year 2005-06, it is estimated that only about 190 million tons of freight traffic will be carried. As against this decline in the amount of traffic carried, the employees increased from about 14 lakhs to 20 lakhs during this period, with the wage bill rising from rupees 350 crores to rupees 600 crores. Besides, enormous investments in modernizing the equipment, acquiring new assets, etc. Then, sir, the other phenomenon which I fail to understand is the employment opportunities for the minorities in the railways. The minorities used to form a very appreciable percentage of the total employment in the railways. But today, sir, I think the railway authorities will have to try rather hard to work out a percentage for them. No doubt, sir, the Honorable Minister of State for Railways carries a lot of weight in the railway administration, but this weight is not at all balanced by a decrease in the employment opportunities for the minority communities. Sir, another important factor which I would like to mention is that efficient maintenance is the backbone of any transport system. It appears, however, that railway workshops have completely stopped doing any scheduled maintenance work for the last 2 years, and this has resulted in deplorable condition of coaches and wagons. In many cases, even the undercarriage maintenance of our country. This is managed by nearly 20 lakh people, except bringing food grains and pulses under the purview of a standard freight. It is good that the Minister for Railways has not increased the freight charges and passenger fares for the coming year. It is really a welcome measure, and I must congratulate him for giving a year of rest for stabilizing the rates which have been revised last year. Sir, for the efficient management of any institution, of any public undertaking, the foremost thing is the security of service and the contentment of the working man. I am sure most of the members would also share my view on this. Therefore, sir, there should be a good relationship between the working railwayman and the government. To achieve that, and I on this occasion request all the trade union leaders to unite themselves to make one union so that they may have good contact and coordination with the government. They should also see that their representatives who are known for honesty and integrity are associated with the railway board, so that the matters which crop up are settled amicably. ये 1000 प्लस वर्ड डिक्टेट किए गए 100 की स्पीड के साथ, फ्लक्चुएशन ना के बराबर है, और आपको SSC CND के टेस्ट नंबर 103 के नाम से मिल जाएगा आपको सॉफ्टवेयर के अंदर। 80 भी लिखेंगे इसके बाद। रेडी? Start it. Mr. Deputy Chairman, I support the motion for reference of the bill to a joint select committee. I heartily welcome the provisions of this measure meant to ameliorate the conditions of workers in the road transport industry. This industry has tremendously increased in recent times, so much so that even railways are afraid of competition from road transport in carrying goods and passengers for long distances. We have made enactments for all the big industries. We have got separate legislation for plantations, for coal, and for others to protect the wages and to provide good working conditions to the workers employed in those industries. Because of the expanding nature of this industry, this bill was necessary and is most welcome. While welcoming this measure, I would like to make some observations on the clauses for the consideration of the Joint Select Committee. With regard to clause 1 dealing with definitions, the provisions of this bill apply only to those undertakings which employ more than 10 workers. Under certain circumstances, it can be extended to those undertakings which employ even 5 workers. I know that the government have their difficulties in applying the provisions in each individual working in this industry, and that has got to be appreciated. But we have got a fear that this might lead to fragmentation of some of the bigger units. We have got before the House a bill to amend the Plantations Labour Act, brought before the House only for making a provision to check fragmentation of tea gardens, so that tendency is there, the tendency to break law even among the big ones. Therefore, I suspect that this provision is likely to be misused by some undertakings, and there might be a tendency for fragmentation. I am glad that my friend Mr. Verma has just suggested that an attempt should be made to make viable units. Of course, there are many transport cooperative societies working at present, and there is a tendency to operate these services on a cooperative basis. To avoid any misuse of the fact, my request to the Honorable Minister would be that this bill should be made applicable to everybody. This has got to be done, otherwise there will be fragmentation and there will be a tendency to employ 5 or less than 5 workers. Thousands of trucks and buses are running in the country which are working individually. Sir, I am glad that with regard to the other provisions, this bill has followed the Factories Act. I am glad that all the good provisions of the Factories Act have been incorporated in this bill. At the very outset, we have got the experience that the provisions of the Factories Act were applied even in the case of mines after a long time. We had to wait for a long time even for the application of overtime rules under the Factories Act. I am glad that provisions relating to wages, hours of work, overtime, etc. have been made applicable, and that the workers in the road transport industry will have the advantage of all these factory facilities which have been allowed under the Factories Act from the start. I may, however, point out that in Chapter 5 dealing with hours and limitation of employment, provision has been made that workers could be relieved after rendering 10 hours duty. This provision appears to me to be extraordinary. I know the difficulties of the road transport industry. The conditions of working are quite different from ordinary factories. They have to work all the 24 hours, and it is very difficult to stipulate anything so far as hours of work are concerned. But still, I may submit that nowhere in no industry the working hours prescribed are more than 9 hours. So this will have to be taken into consideration while considering the working hours of workers in the road transport industry. With regard to Chapter 7, Wages and Leave, I am glad that provision for overtime has been made in accordance with the Factories Act. I have to observe that though Clause 29 of this bill is a copy of Section 79 of the Factories Act, some of the explanations and provisions which have been made only to clarify the position and not to add to the facilities or advantages have been omitted. The provisions are about the system of estimates of wages, etc. Those provisions may also be included in the present bill. Then, sir, some observations were made by some members. One of them was that the Payment of Wages Act does not apply to these workers. I submit that it does apply, and clause 27 of this bill provides for it. There were some other observations also, that some other facilities like health insurance and other things have not been provided. I hope that the State Insurance Act will be made applicable to the workers. If it is not applicable, or if it cannot be applied in the present form, necessary amendment may be made. ये 840 वर्ड डिक्टेट किए गए हैं, 80 की स्पीड है, फ्लक्चुएशन के साथ में बोला गया है, और ये आपको SSC C D टेस्ट नंबर 103 मिल जाएगा। अगर आप 9 वाली फाइल में टाइप करना चाहते हो तो ये 456 नंबर है, केसी सोर्स है।